Hi. This is one of my all-time favorite topics to talk about, which is kind of sick and twisted when you hear what it is. We all have heard of PTSD. Post-traumatic stress is awful. What many people are not aware of is moral injury. Very similar to PTSD, and they can overlap. This is intriguing. And then, of course, we have burnout, which I think just about all of us have experienced at some point in time. So those are the topics, and it's good. So get a cup of coffee, a cool beverage, depending on where you are, a bag of chips or popcorn, because this gets good. We're going to start with talking about PTSD. For the most part, a lot of people think PTSD only affects, or is a side effect almost, of the military. Because for so many years, that's what it was associated with. It goes so far beyond the military. Yes, our brave service men and women go through hell. They do. And we're going to discuss that a little further in a few minutes. What people don't realize, children as young as 3 suffer PTSD when they are in a home that is toxic. When they are in a home of violence, addiction, alcoholism, drug abuse, physical violence, sweetheart, that's their very own war zone right there. That's awful. That's at the age of 3. It continues. By the age of 6 or 7, for them, they're numb to it. It's a way of life. For many, it's socially acceptable. They may be already exhibiting the same behaviors. It's all they know. For some, it's a learned behavior. It's awful. Then we have victims of violent crime. People that have been kidnapped, sold into trafficking for prostitution. PTSD. It's so traumatic, and it runs so deep. And the bad thing is, for a lot of people, it almost becomes socially acceptable. People don't care. They just, PTSD, so what? Seriously? Seriously? No, not on my watch. I take it serious, way serious. You have a child raised in a toxic environment who's subjected to all kinds of abuse, neglect, foster care, abandonment, because there are parents that will just disappear for days on end, weeks on end, threatening the kids. Don't you tell anybody, because if I find out you told somebody, you're going to be sorry. The kids may or may not have food. And this is how they're living. This becomes their norm. How's that child going to be when they're 12 or 13? Probably not very well adjusted. They may do decent in school because for a lot of kids, that's their escape. They don't have to think about the hell waiting for them at home when they're at school. For others, who goes to school? Nobody's going to care. Nobody cares about them anyway. All they know is violence, rejection, alcoholism. That's no way to live. Those scars are so deep in these kids. And there are people that will say, well, they're just bad kids. No, they're not. They are wounded kids who grow up to be wounded adults. They need help. Anybody dealing with PTSD needs help. couple in a relationship. One is extremely abusive to the other. Could be men, could be women. I mean, it can go either direction. Horrible abuse for years, maybe just a few months or a few weeks. That can be PTSD. And people say, why won't they leave? It's not that easy. It's not that easy. Because they may be told, if you leave, I'll kill myself. And they buy into that. They don't know the person's probably calling their bluff. It's just a manipulation. Narcissists do that, reactive abusers do that. But the victims don't realize that. They may actually start to develop feelings for the abuser if they haven't already. And they're going to make excuses. Well, it's my fault. I caused it. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have cooked that. I shouldn't have dressed this way. I shouldn't have looked at them this way. And they beat the hell out of them. And a few days later, they apologize, say they'll never do it again. But they do. That's PTSD. And in all likelihood, that abuser went through the very same thing when they were growing up. As I said, it's a learned behavior. They may have been taught, this is how you treat your significant other. This is how you treat women. This is how you treat men. That's awful. That's the world of PTSD. And so you have the triggers with PTSD, as everybody knows. Somebody may hear a popping sound. They may think it's the popping of a belt. It might just be a tire blowing outside. Any number of sounds. They hear footsteps at night. They think somebody's coming in the room to beat them, to rape them. Maybe, maybe not. They live in fear. So when they hear footsteps at night, they panic. They may sleep with a light on. They may sleep with a knife under their pillow, trying to protect themselves. It's awful. And I know I keep saying that, but there just aren't words. And as we know, those brave men and women in the military and the horrors that they see are just, oh my gosh. They're over there doing a job. They know what they're going for, what they sign up for. They know this going in. But sometimes they don't know all of it. And that's where we slip into moral injury. With moral injury, it is defined by your work, your career, your employment. Moral injury is when you are at work and you are a witness to, or a participant of, or have knowledge of acts that go against your moral fiber. Okay? This can go through so many avenues. Yes, of course, military, law enforcement, doctors, nurses. I know doctors and nurses during COVID. We took an oath. First, do you no harm. They're surrounded with people dying. There was no vaccines. They didn't have enough beds. They didn't have enough ventilators. They didn't have enough staff. Couldn't even hold the hands of those dying. You couldn't let family in to be with the people that are dying. First, do no harm. Do no harm, my ass. They couldn't do anything. They felt helpless. They were sick. They hadn't seen their families in ages. They were missing holidays with their kids, birthdays. Kids are upset. Spouses are upset. People were having to do the best they could. And it goes against every fiber of their moral being. They love their job. They love being doctors and nurses. But they don't like just sitting by. with their hands tied, not being able to help. They felt totally helpless. I cannot tell you how many I have talked to who just cried and cried. They would call middle of the night. We would video chat. They're leaning against a wall in a bathroom or in the doctor's lounge crying. The bruises from the masks on their face. Their face is puffy and swollen. They're exhausted, saying, I can't do this. I can't do this. A truck just pulled in, one of the makeshift morgues. It's full of dead people. I can't do this. It was awful. And that's moral injury. It goes against every fiber of their being. Teachers. I have a good friend in London, brilliant teacher, and her students were asking questions about colonization and decolonization. And these were, I want to say, junior high school kids. And she was answering the questions appropriately, honestly. Parents loved her. Students loved her because she was honest and open. Administration, not so much. No. You tell them what we want you to tell them. You keep your opinions and your thoughts to yourself. She didn't want to lie to people. She's a very open, honest person, which is why we're friends. And they said, no, they don't need to know the truth. You tell them what we want to tell them. Broke her heart. It really upset the students and the families. She quit teaching. She gave up because it went against her to lie and to pretend facts that happened didn't happen. She couldn't do it. Law enforcement, first responders, firefighters, our heroes. We love these folks. I have a lot of friends that are first responders out there, and I think the world of them. They get up in the morning, kiss the kids goodbye, kiss the spouse goodbye, all is well, and they head out. They don't know what they might be walking into. Years ago, you go to a crime scene, you go to a house on fire or somebody having chest pain, and you deal with a situation, and that's it. Now, firefighters, EMS are targets. You go to help somebody having chest pain, somebody in a car accident, and people are taking shots at you. You haven't done anything wrong. You're there to help, to protect and serve, not be shot at. And then you have those lovely souls that said, well, that's what they signed up for. Is it really? Is it? When they went to EMT school, paramedic school, firefighter training, law enforcement academies, did they really sign up to be a target? No. They signed up to serve and protect and to help others, not to be shot down. I cannot imagine being the spouse, not knowing if your husband or wife is coming home. I have a good friend, Lauren, brilliant EMT paramedic. She has a little girl, and her little girl, has issues sometimes with mom going to work because she's afraid mom isn't going to come home. Very real concerns from a very bright, astute little girl. And she has to sit down and talk to her. Be honest with the kids. Always be honest with them. I have a hair tickling my eye. Sorry. But don't lie to them. Be honest. But that's moral injury. They're going out to do their job, to do their best, to serve the community, and they're being shot at. Officers that go into homes, and firefighters, that go into homes, and they find kids, little kids, 3 years old, playing in a pool of their parents' blood. God only knows what's happened in that environment. They pick up the kids, take them out, call family services. They're here to serve and protect. And while all this is going on, people across the street are shooting at them. They didn't do anything wrong. They're there for a crime scene. They're there to get these kids out of there. And God forbid they show up on a domestic disturbance, because God only knows what's going to happen. Nowadays, you go to serve a warrant, you might get shot. They're just serving papers from the court. They're doing their job. Why shoot them? They're doing their job. That's moral injury, because it goes against their moral fiber. They're there to do a job. They want to do a job. They love their job. And they witness all kinds of horrible things, and they can't talk about it. Who are they going to share this with? They can't share this with their spouse. That they walked in and found a decapitated body and a little girl playing in the blood. You can't talk about that. And in some precincts, men don't cry, women don't cry. You know, officers are stoic. They keep it in. It's killing them on the inside. They witness things that just kills them. Moral injury. And yes, our wonderful men and women in the military. I will try not to get emotional, because I deal with a lot of vets, and this just breaks my heart. I had a young man, great person, a vet, that I've treated for quite some time. Took a while for him to open up. He finally did. He has a lot of anger issues, understandably. Really didn't before he went into the military, but he loves the military, loves what he does, loves our country. And he's done several tours overseas. What he didn't know and didn't sign up for was, I don't know which tour it was, but it was early on in his career. They were in a village, and one of his superiors came over and told him, guard the entrance of this. And it was kind of a ramshackle hut, house thing. It was just bombed and just torn apart. Don't let anybody in. You don't know anything. You don't hear anything. Do you understand? He had to give the response, yes, sir, and stood there with his gun. He heard what was going on inside, the screaming and the yelling and the begging, as soldiers were raping and beating an old woman and a child. He had grandparents and he had a little sister. This was killing him. He said he just kept, thinking different things in his head, talking to himself, anything to drown this out. And then it stopped. And his superior came over, put his hand on his shoulder and said, come with me. He can't exactly say no. He said, sir, he said, your turn. You're up. You're not going to talk if you're part of this. That was awful. That was the worst day of his life. And this was not the only time that it happened. That's horrible. And then he comes home. And family wonders why he won't go visit his grandparents. They wonder why he won't hug his little sister. He can't talk about this to anybody. This is killing him on the inside. He loves his family. It's killing him. This goes beyond PTSD and moral injury. But this is what some of our men and women have had to deal with. It's not right. But that's the way life is. And then we have burnout. During COVID, our doctors and nurses were working around the clock. There were no breaks. You just caught a nap when you could, eat when you could, and you go back and do it again. Our men and women in the military, same thing. When they're in combat, you don't stop till the job's done. And that may be a day, that might be 8 days, but you don't stop till the job's done. For our first responders, firefighters, and cops that are out there, again, they're there till the job's done. 9/11, they worked and they worked and they worked and they worked. And exposing themselves to all kinds of carcinogens. They worked till the job was done. That's what they do. So you can see how PTSD, moral injury, and burnout can overlap. This can be so confusing to people. Not every therapist, counselor, doctor appreciates and understands this. Some have not been exposed to it, which is understandable. Others, honestly, don't care. I hate to say that, but there's a lot of people that don't care. And I don't want to say victim, I don't like that word, but the soldier, the cop, the firefighter, the doctor, the nurse, whomever, are just left to deal with it. All this has been thrust upon you. Deal with it. Here, take some drugs. Yeah, don't drink. Don't get violent. Really? You wonder why people commit suicide? It's awful. I've worked with some beautiful, beautiful souls in my day that are just so wounded inside. Sometimes I just listen. I hold them if we meet in person, I just hold them when they cry. And that's what they need to do some days, is just cry and feel safe. It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. There are agencies out there starting to deal with moral injury, thank God, but not enough. We've got a long way to go. So, if you think that you fall into the category, bring it up to your healthcare provider, whoever you see. Let them know what it is. Let them read up on it. It's very, very real. And it overlaps with PTSD and burnout. You can have one, you can have two, you can have all three. And the sad part is you have it because you have to deal with it. But sweetheart, so does your family. So do the spouses, so do the kids. The spouses don't know because they can't talk about it. They just know something's wrong and they're shutting down. And of course, they're assuming all kinds of crazy things. They're assuming there's somebody else. They're into drugs, they're into alcohol and gambling. They might just be sitting in their car all night crying. Hard to say. That's why we need to talk about it. Find someone to talk to. We can make a difference. I promise you we will work through this. If you want to treat with me, let me know. Absolutely, positively, let me know. I will bend over backwards for you. I don't want anybody to think they are in this alone, because baby, you're not. I promise you, you are not alone in this. And if I can't help you, I know somebody somewhere that can. I know a lot of people affiliated with the military, with veterans groups, that are some of the finest people on the face of this earth that I will be happy to refer you to. Let's get the help that you deserve. If this video doesn't apply to you, it might apply to somebody you know, have them get in touch with me. Have them watch the video. Let them know there is hope and there is help.